I found this story where it shouldn't have been, and once you hear it, it doesn't let go. The first time I saw a raptor tear through ballistic glass, it was standing in the middle of a children's reptile house with blood hanging from its teeth, emergency lights flashing over its skin, and three survivors screaming behind me to keep running. I'm Mr. D, and you are listening to Mr. D Stories. Most of you listening to my stories are not subscribed yet. So please like and subscribe to hear more from Bloody Chapter, because what happened inside Halcyon Wildlife Park after midnight was not a rescue mission. It was a cover-up in body armor, and by the time my team understood what we had been sent into, the gates were already locked behind us. I was doing private emergency response back then. The kind of contract work cities use for riots, chemical leaks, and high-risk evacuations. That night, our pager went off at 12:14 a.m. with a level black civilian rescue request at Halcyon Wildlife Park, a new high-tech zoo on the edge of the city built with smart fences, underground rails, biometric gates, and enough corporate money to bury any truth it didn't like. Dispatch told us there had been a total systems failure during a private donor event, multiple casualties, loss of animal containment, and a request for immediate extraction of staff and VIP guests before dawn. We rolled in with 2 armored trucks, 6 operators, thermal optics, rifles, medkits, breaching tools, and the usual confidence men carry when they still think the threat is human. From outside, the zoo looked dead. Rain swept across the front gates while every light beyond the entrance plaza flickered in broken patches. The digital welcome board was frozen halfway through a children's message. Welcome to tomorrow's wildlife. Someone had fired on the main glass doors from inside. There was blood on the ticket. Scanners, handprints smeared down the gift shop shutters. And something big had bent the security gate outward like wire. Team lead was Garza, former military, hard voice, harder eyes. He split us before we crossed the plaza. Garza took Reed and Nolan toward the central hub. I was paired with Velez and Mercer to clear the east side and reach a trapped tram near the Rainforest Dome, the first. Bad sign wasn't the blood, it was the silence. Zoos are never silent. Even at night there's movement, calls, ventilation, something alive in the dark. Halcyon had nothing, just rain on metal and the crackle of damaged power somewhere deeper in the park. We moved through the entrance tunnel with weapon lights low, boots sliding across broken glass. I remember passing a mural of smiling families under holographic dinosaurs. And beneath it, half hidden by emergency red light, a claw mark gouged through concrete. The East Concourse opened into exhibits dressed up with corporate language like reconstructed megafauna and adaptive heritage species. But once we entered the first holding corridor and saw a containment door split straight down the center, none of us needed the lie anymore. Whatever had done it was engineered muscle wrapped in reptile instinct, and it was loose. We found the first body near the nocturnal house, park security, lower half gone, radio still clipped to the vest, hissing static and someone begging for gate C to reopen. The drag marks told the rest of the story. Before we could move, the radio burst alive with a woman screaming, "They're in the vents, they're in the vents, don't use the and then cut off." At the same moment, a tram alert chimed ahead of us. Velez checked his wrist map. The disabled passenger tram was less than 200 yards away. Civilian life signs still registered. 4, maybe 5. Garza ordered us to push forward and extract immediately. So we ran. The east path curved past a petting zone, a fossil, and a flooded tunnel full of floating toys. Then we heard the first impact, a metallic slam from above, fast and heavy, followed by another across the glass roofline. Mercer snapped his light upward just in time to catch movement racing across the support beams. Long tail, low body, claws gripping steel like fingers, contact high. He shouted, but it was already gone. We reached the tram station seconds later. Inside the tram were 3 civilians, a woman in a torn evening dress, a teenage boy with blood on his hands, and an older man clutching his side. The 4th life sign was outside the car. We found her under the platform stairs, alive but barely, park employee badge snapped in half, one leg torn open so badly I could see white through the blood. She kept saying the same word, Basement, basement, over and over. Velez started first aid while I covered the platform. That was when I saw them. 3 heat shapes in the fogged glass of the dome across from us, moving in perfect coordination through fern shadows taller than men. They were not charging, they were flanking. Mercer saw it too and yelled for the civilians to move. We got them out of the tram just as the first raptor hit. It came through the side glass like a missile, shards exploding across the tiles, body twisting in midair with terrifying speed. Mercer fired twice, but the rounds only staggered it. The animal corrected instantly and lunged for the teenage boy. I caught its shoulder with a shock button hard enough to light it blue across the ribs. It shrieked, spun, and snapped at me so close I felt teeth scrape my vest plate. Then Velez put a burst into its neck. The raptor collapsed thrashing, tail hammering the floor, but the other 2 were already inside. If you have never watched trained men lose control of a situation in under 5 seconds, then you have never seen a pack hunter enter a kill space designed by people who assumed walls still mattered. The second and third raptors came from opposite sides of the platform, one low under the benches, the other vaulting over the rail, and suddenly the station was nothing but muzzle flashes. Broken glass, screaming civilians, and claws hitting tile faster than thought. Mercer caught one round across the arm trying to drag the older man behind cover, then got knocked flat when the larger raptor slammed into him chest first. I shot until slide lock, barely tracking the shape through the emergency lights. While Velez shoved the wounded staff woman beneath the ticket counter and called Garza overcomes, the teenage boy grabbed a fallen flare from our med pack and lit it without being told. Red fire burst across the station. For a second all 3 animals hesitated. That hesitation saved us. Velez shoved the civilians toward the service corridor, while I yanked Mercer up by his rig straps and kicked the nearest raptor off the platform edge. It hit the rail, twisted, and vanished below with a snarl. Garza came over the radio at last, breathless for the first time that night. Central hub compromised. We have multiple species loose. Main evac is dead. All teams reroute to rooftop. Extraction above veterinary operations. Then gunfire, then Reed shouting, then a sound so deep and violent it erased every other noise. Not a roar from a movie, a pressure wave. Something enormous was moving through the main concourse. We pulled back through the East Service Hall with 5 survivors and 1 injured operator, sealing doors behind us as we moved. The corridor led through feed prep rooms, med storage, a polished genetics wing, and finally a freight passage beneath the reptile complex. That was where the zoo started telling the truth. The walls changed from cheerful branding to industrial containment steel. Hazard placards replaced animal symbols. Transport diagrams showed oversized holding cages, tranquilizer lock systems, and something called adaptive pack. Enclosure testing. Halcyon had never been a zoo. It was a showroom built over a live research program, and the people who funded it had invited donors inside before proving they could control what they made. We reached a security hub and found Garza there with Nolan and 2 more survivors, a veterinarian carrying a stun prod and a little girl wrapped in a bloodstained visitor poncho. Garza had a bite wound through the side of his vest and Nolan was limping, but both were still functional. Reed was not with them. No one said his name. The veterinarian, Dr. Soren, used the terminal to pull up internal schematics while Mercer bled onto the floor and the little girl stared at all of us with the flat expression children get when fear has gone too far to look like fear. According to Soren, the power failure had started in sublevel to beneath veterinary operations, where the park kept restricted assets away from public view. Backup systems should have sealed every lower corridor, but someone had overridden the lockdown and unlocked transport routes into public exhibit zones. Garza asked who would do that. Soren waited too long. Then she told us the board had scheduled a private midnight demonstration for investors. A controlled release, small pack behavior, tactical intelligence, response to moving targets. The donors wanted to see the animals hunt in a simulated urban layout built under the zoo. Something had gone wrong during the transfer. Wrong was a coward's word for it. They had staged a massacre beneath a city and lost control. Before Garza could press harder, motional arms lit the monitor wall. Dozens of contacts, raptors in the lower freight hall, a heavy thermal moving from the aquarium side, another from the old aviary access tunnel. They were not wandering, they were converging on the security room from multiple angles. Like they understood choke points better than half the armed men ID worked with. Garza made the call fast. We would move the survivors through veterinary, up the surgical lift shaft, and onto the rooftop helipad where a private extraction bird was inbound. Nolan and Mercer would escort the civilians. Garza, Velez, and I would hold the intersections and buy them time. Up to then, I had still been telling myself we were getting people out. But when the security shutters began to buckle under repeated impacts and the first ceiling vent tore open above the monitor wall, I understood the truth. We were fighting our way through a hunting ground that had already learned our route. The first raptor dropped from the vent directly onto Nolan. He went down before he could raise his rifle. Garza emptied half a magazine into its ribs and Velez pulled the little girl clear as Mercer smashed the shutter release. The hall exploded into chaos. Raptors poured through the partially lifted steel like water through a broken dam, lean bodies sliding under, over, and around each other, in silence until they were close enough to kill. Garza shouted for the civilians to run. I threw a road flare into the corridor and lit the hall blood red. One raptor lunged through the smoke and I caught it in the face with Nolan's dropped shotgun. Another hit the wall beside me hard enough to crack tile. Velez drove his knife into its throat while Mercer, one-handed and barely conscious, kept firing down the hall to hold the rest back. We retreated room by room through imaging, surgery prep, and a cold storage corridor lined with labeled embryo canisters. Some were smashed, some were empty. The private elevator to the roof was dead, so we forced the stairwell. Halfway up, Garza finally admitted what command had left out. The incoming helicopter was not a city rescue asset. It belonged to Halcyon Corporate. They had not sent us to save everyone. They had sent us to recover whoever mattered and erase whatever didn't. Then something huge hit the stairwell door below us, and the entire concrete tower shook. The thing below us did not climb like an animal. It climbed like a battering ram with teeth, each impact against the stairwell door sending dust from the ceiling and panic through every person on those stairs. And when the hinges finally gave way, the sound that came through the opening was so deep it felt like the building itself had opened its mouth. Garza ordered Nolan's shotgun handed to me. Put Velez on rear security and pushed the civilians upward while Mercer half stumbled against the rail leaving blood on every landing. We emerged onto the rooftop veterinary deck under hard rain and rotor wash from a helicopter circling but not yet landing, its spotlight cutting through the storm. From up there I could finally see the scale of what had happened. Fires burned in 3 exhibit zones. The rainforest dome was shattered. The monorail hung broken over the central lake. Floodlights strobed across moving shapes below small fast ones in packs, larger ones alone, all of them spreading through the park while city lights glowed just beyond the perimeter walls. If the outer gates failed before sunrise, the whole nightmare would spill straight into the sleeping neighborhoods beyond the zoo. The helicopter finally dropped lower, but instead of medics or city responders, a man in corporate tactical gear leaned out the side door and shouted for Dr. Soren by name. No one else, not the little girl, not the wounded staff, not my team, just the scientist who knew what had happened down there. Garza saw it instantly and raised his rifle at the aircraft. But before he could force the issue, the rooftop access door blew inward behind us. The predator that came through was bigger than anything we had faced all night, all scar tissue and wet muscle, with a blocky skull, crushing jaws, and intelligent eyes that did not waste a second deciding who the threat was. It drove straight at Garza. He fired point blank and the round sparked bone and blood. But the creature still hit him hard enough to throw him against the fuel lockers. The survivors scattered. The helicopter pulled back in panic, rotors chopping rain in 2 white sheets. Velez dragged the little girl behind an air conditioning unit while I pumped shot after shot into the animal's shoulder, trying to turn it away from the civilians. It pivoted on me with terrifying speed, roared, and charged. I jumped the barrier and hit the deck hard as its jaws snapped closed where my chest had been. Up close it smelled like hot metal, blood, and rotten meat. Mercer, who should not have even been standing, opened a fuel locker and rolled a canister across the wet concrete toward me. I understood immediately. I fired into the leaking fuel line just as Velez hurled a lit flare from the far side of the roof. The blast lit the rooftop white-orange and slammed the predator sideways into the crane base. It did not die. It screamed and thrashed and tried to rise through flame, but it bought us seconds, and seconds were all Garza needed. Burned, bleeding, half-crushed. He staggered to the crane controls and swung the maintenance arm across the rooftop access structure just as more raptors spilled from the broken stairwell. Steel smashed concrete. The crane arm collapsed the upper doorway and buried the first wave under debris. Then Garza looked at me and pointed toward the helipad edge where the corporate helicopter was finally settling to grab Soren and leave. I ran through smoke and rain, caught Soren by the collar as she tried to board, and ripped the hard case from her hands. It was cold, metal, lock-sealed, marked with biohazard tags and halcyon asset codes. Embryos. They had still been trying to save the project. The corporate gunman raised his weapon at me, but before he could fire, Velez shot him through the window. The helicopter lurched, clipped the pad rail, and spun sideways into the edge of the roof, throwing sparks and rotor fragments across the deck. Garza screamed for everyone to move because the crash had done what the dinosaurs couldn't do. It ruptured the secondary fuel line. I grabbed the little girl with one arm, the embryo case with the other, and ran for the maintenance catwalk leading to the adjacent admin building while Velez hauled Mercer behind me. Below us, through fire and rain, I saw raptors pouring into the veterinary stairwell and heard the big predator slamming itself against twisted steel, still alive, still trying to reach us. Garza stayed behind to hold the choke point. That was the last clear look I got at him, standing in burning rain with blood down his face, firing into the smoke while half the roof behind him collapsed. We made it across the catwalk seconds before the helipad erupted. The blast wave knocked us flat on the admin roof and sent burning debris spinning into the black zoo below. Then, city sirens finally rose in the distance. Real ones, public ones. Too late for most of the people inside, but not too late to witness the aftermath. Dawn came gray and wet over a park still moving. Police sealed the district by sunrise. News helicopters called it an industrial gas disaster before noon. Halcyon executives vanished by evening. The embryo case disappeared from evidence before the next day. Officially, only a limited exotic animal incident occurred and all dangerous specimens were neutralized. That was the lie they settled on. But 3 weeks later, when I was home recovering with stitches across my ribs and burns on both hands, I got an unmarked package at my apartment door. Inside was a zoo visitor map, wet with something that smelled like disinfectant and blood. And on the back someone had written 3 words in black marker. They moved them north. Thanks for watching.